James, welcome back. It's been a while, and we're happy to have you. Um, yeah, we haven't heard a lot of what actually since I think June, since Geneva. Um, we haven't heard a lot of what's going on. We've followed some, of course, with the rate of things happening in Israel, where people move from one situation to another, and that's just gently saying it. I don't think a lot of people had in mind to follow also what's going on with the WHO, the pandemic accord, any other things that might be happening. Um, so if you can just basically take us a little bit along the timeline from June until now, briefly, what has been going on?
Um, I want to say first off, thank you for having me. And I want to encourage everyone to ask questions. I think it would be very good for people to ask the questions that are in your mind so that we can, leave today with you having those questions been answered, if at all possible. Okay. Um, in terms of what has happened since June, let me rewind it just a little bit and explain what the heck happened in June.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I put one link in the chat, unacceptable.us. Now, obviously, that was written for the United States in mind, but all of the information uh, applies, pretty much worldwide. And so on that page, unacceptable.us, if you scroll down a little bit, there's a PDF that has 25 reasons to reject the amendments and 30 reasons to reject the treaty. And that stands as my best summary of my personal beliefs, my reasons why we need to oppose what they're trying to do. And these reasons are probably not even remotely close to what most people believe is going on. And that starts with the problem is that in the world today, across the board, what information most people get does not come from the source. It comes from somebody who is talking about what somebody said about what somebody said about what somebody said about what's going on. And so I want to start by saying I honestly believe that if you have no idea what's going on, you're in a better position than somebody who thinks they know what's going on and is wrong and is advising people in that manner. And so, every day I try to come from the position of, I don't know what's going on. Here's the information that I'm basing my feelings and beliefs and opinions and actions on, subject to change. Okay. And so on June 1st, after a large group of people had gone to Geneva to protest and were celebrating victory, um, defeat got snatched out of the hands of people who were happy that they, were there. And amendments to the international health regulations were adopted. And still to this day, I don't think anybody has read them. Okay. Go get the source material and check what I'm saying to ensure that what I'm saying is accurate, because I could certainly be wrong. But what they adopted was not what people think has been going on. Primarily, this is a deal about redirecting money through the WHO to build manufacturing capacity to make more pharmaceutical products in poorer countries. Because the reason why these negotiations started was not because of vaccine passports or lockdowns or mandates or global governance or any of those things that you may have heard. The reason why these negotiations began more than 3 years ago in December of 2021 was you gotta teleport yourself back in time to the middle of 2021. In the middle of 2021, you know, most people in Israel had probably already been vaccinated many times. And around the world, poor nations looked at nations like Israel or the United States or Canada. Canada had a contract for 10 injections for all 40 million citizens. They had a contract for 400 million jabs. Poorer nations who at the time believed the propaganda that these, injections were the path forward, that we're going to, you know, this is going to protect you, you won't get COVID, and you can go back to normal. They felt, and they literally used the phrase vaccine apartheid. All the wealthy nations are gobbling up all the drugs and jabs and ventilators and treatments and everything, and poor people around the world, primarily Africa and island nations, Caribbean, South Pacific, so forth, um, they were feeling shortchanged. They felt that the wealthy nations were hogging all these wonderful products for themselves. And I say that very sarcastically. Okay. Well, since the middle of 2021, I think most of us here, I would imagine, have looked at what happened, and we've looked at the jabs and the drugs and the treatments and everything, and we're like, those things made it worse. Okay. But what has hung around in these negotiations are beliefs that, number one, um, the way to prevent a pandemic is to set up a system. And this is, again, where people get confused. They use the phrase One Health. Okay. One Health does not mean what you think it means, most likely. One Health means they want to go looking for pathogens everywhere on the planet. Poultry farms, dairy farms, any kind of agricultural setting, um, wastewater treatment. Okay, as a good example, several months ago, in the middle of all the insanity that has gone on in the Middle East, the WHO was using the PCR to check wastewater in Gaza. And they claimed that they found vaccine derived polio. And they stopped what was going on so that they could give polio vaccines to children in Gaza. Now, when you realize that what they found was, according to them, with the fraudulent PCR process, the very, the very pathogen that they're distributing, the insanity of this knows no bounds, right? So here in the United States, in California, despite all of our problems, we're also under a bird flu emergency because they're using this fraudulent PCR to claim that there is, a pathogen with pandemic potential, and everybody's got to be afraid. And they want to test the poultry and the dairy and the milk and everything else under the sun. The One Health system is how they pretend to find a problem so that they can identify these pathogens, bring them into the laboratory through what they call the pathogen access and benefit sharing system, in short order, to turn it into money. If they can scare people by believing that there is some problem out there and manufacture billions upon billions of injections and be in charge of the distribution network and the logistics of implementing that whenever they need to, that's not the same as your local government officials, on a city, municipality, province, state, level, mandating that you take the jabs. They're not trying to make you do it. They're trying to profit from it and be in charge of the manufacturing, distribution, and logistics. Because if you put yourself in the middle of some poor nation and you were a leader of that nation, okay, you can't mandate a jab if you don't have it in the warehouse. And so the lesson that they learned was that big pharma was not big enough. They didn't have manufacturing capacity on small islands or in the middle of Africa or wherever you want to think. What these negotiations are really about is setting up this, they call it surveillance, but it's not cameras and audio recordings or your phone tracking you or vaccine passports. No, 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 no. By surveillance, what they mean is they want to go out into the world looking for pathogens that they can bring into the lab, and they want poor nations to participate in that search because Israel and Europe and America and Canada and Australia, New Zealand, they're already doing that. They have the money and the technology and the laboratories and the genomic sequencing and all that sort of stuff. Um, I remember reading an article probably a couple of years ago that in Somalia, prior to COVID, they did not have any genetic sequencing laboratories, but now they have probably more than a dozen. So what they're really negotiating is a biological weapons research and development program. And the United States is at the forefront of that. And so is Israel and Europe and everyone else. And what they're trying to do is get the poorer nations involved so that it can be global, looking for pathogens with pandemic potential. And the only agreed upon solution is going to be a pharmaceutical solution, whether it's a drug or a jab. And in the amendments that they adopted on June 1st, the definition of a pathogen with pandemic potential uh, and the products that can be used during a pandemic, which they did not define what a pandemic is, are all pharmaceutical products, drugs, and they added to vaccines, they added gene and cell-based therapies. Okay. So this is not about vaccine passports. That's going to come either from the European Union or from your individual country or however it may be implemented. Off on the side, they are certainly doing that. And the international health regulations sets up certain rules, and it's very confusing because the way in which they do this is so slick, so slippery. I'll use the United States as an example. We know that our government cannot mandate that we have to be injected to travel throughout the country. But if someone wanted to travel to the United States, the international health regulations essentially says, you should not make those people get jabbed. This is what the international health regulations say. No paperwork should be required unless you want to. And you just go, wait a minute. Every nation can require the 193 other nations, citizens, when they're traveling to the United States, that they have to get jabbed in order to come into the country. If an American leaves and wants to come back, there's no requirement. Novak Djokovic, the tennis player, tried to get into the United States and get into Australia to participate in a tennis tournament, and he was not allowed because he was not a citizen. And so this is so slippery that when a person travels and they are no longer in their nation that they are a citizen of, the country that they are visiting can quarantine them, can mandate that they receive a vaccine or treatment or whatever. And so when you leave your country to travel is how they can implement that, because then the nation can say, well, we're not doing it to our citizens. We're doing it to all of the other citizens. And so essentially that could operate as a lockdown planet because your nation won't do it to you, but your nation will do it to all of the other nations. And the effect is the same. Okay. But they skirt the law because then the country can say, well, foreign citizens don't have any rights in our country. And that's the problem. That's really where the problem is. So amendments to the international health regulations were adopted on June 1st. It took them several months to translate it into the 6 languages that um, they're obligated to support. And when they finally notified all of the nations, the way it all works out, every nation has until I believe it's July 17th of this year to just write a letter to the WHO and reject the amendments that were adopted. So there's still, 6 or 7 months, where every nation can reject them. But the Knesset or any parliament or Congress or they don't get to vote on this. This is your leadership. This is your prime minister, your foreign minister, your health minister. That is who needs to be persuaded that this is not a good idea. But not to disparage any individual person because I don't know all of the individual details, but the vast majority of people in those positions are working hand in glove with Pfizer and Moderna and all of the other drug companies. And they still seem to believe that the injections and all of the treatments that were approved were wonderful and great. And this is what the world needs. So the amendments to the international health regulations were adopted. They're primarily about money and surveillance to set up this, system to put the WHO in charge of, you know, looking for pathogens and scaring people by declaring emergencies. And the pandemic treaty is trying, or agreement is trying to figure out the poor nations don't want to be forced to spend the money to go looking for pathogens. And if they find a pathogen, they want a piece of the profit. None of this is talking about natural health and the fact that, wait a minute, most of the problems actually come about because you're bringing these pathogens into laboratories and you're manipulating them and you're causing health problems because they do leak out in some fashion. There's so many stories about that. But worse than that is that the treatment is really a biological weapon. And for people who understand, what these injections are, it's horrifying that this is a self-inflicted, you know, existential catastrophe. Billions of people have been injected with something that's harmful, but not one word in all of the negotiations that I've watched and read and everything, not one time has anybody stopped and said, wait a minute, the solution's worse than the problem. What are we doing? Why are we trying to invest billions, if not trillions of dollars into what I believe are biological weapons designed to harm people, to build the business for big pharma, because everyone who's been injected seems to have some kind of health problem. If it kills people too quickly, there's not enough profit to be made. They don't necessarily want to kill people. They want to kill a little bit of you on a microscopic level and make it be people are unaware of the connection between the heart problems and the cancers and every other ailment and the fact that they're injecting toxins into their body and the body's response is to attack whatever cells have been changed. And on a microscopic level, you can see from autopsies that the tissue in the body has been damaged to the point where if it's bad enough, if you get enough boosters, if you have enough, damage done, ultimately it will kill you. But in the interim, it raises the level of comorbidities, okay, dis-ease, And the entire industry is just stealing money through government health programs to treat people for the problems that they actually cause with the injections. And so it starts with understanding that this is a business model. This is their way of stealing an entire nation's wealth by convincing people that their prevention is going to make them safer, when in reality, the prevention that they're offering is devastation. And so they have meetings scheduled for February 17th to the 21st to continue the negotiations for the pandemic agreement. As we're recording this here, it's Sunday, January 19th. So tomorrow, Donald Trump is supposed to be inaugurated in as president. I don't know what he's planning to do, but regardless of what he does, there's 193 other nations involved. And so don't count on Donald Trump and the United States to save you from big pharma. Okay. If if the international health regulations were thrown away, if the pandemic agreement never happens, if the WHO disappeared off the planet and no longer existed, you still have to deal with your doctor and the fact that your doctor most likely is pushing pharmaceutical products on you. And so the amendments and the treaty and the WHO and Donald Trump and all of that sort of stuff, um, yeah, that's all interesting and we can certainly talk about it. But that's not the problem. The problem is the people that you think and you trust to help you maintain or regain your health are working within a system designed to harm you with products that you think or are led to believe, people are led to believe, is the right thing to do. And until individual people look at that and go, wait a minute, this is not helping. This is making people less healthy. And they walk away from that entire medical system, we will continue to have this problem. And so it's about half an hour or so. I'll stop there and open it up for questions.
Oh, that was a pretty decent summary. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that really tells us that, yeah, at least here in the Netherlands, I can say that we have mandatory health insurance, for example.
Mhm.
We cannot really escape to go to an alternative sources, but I think eventually it will be on the public to put the right pressure, also in Israel, I'd say, to
If I may,
try to,
if I may
yes,
comment on that,
sure.
I'm not intimately familiar with the inner workings of,
No,
the health system in the Netherlands or the EU.
no.
Here in the United States, because of our, we mostly we have a mixed up system. People beyond a certain age get Medicare. People who are relatively poor can be covered by something called Medicaid. A lot of it is covered through work and policies that come through, employers and so forth. And the knee-jerk reaction from people who have been programmed their entire life, when they have a health issue, they have been taught to not think about, well, what is causing that problem? I must need to make a change because I'm doing something or I'm failing to do something. And I need to change, either too much of something, too little of something, my environment, my stress levels, everything that you would, believe in a holistic view would identify the cause of the problem and make a change to stop causing the problem. Okay. Well, we are all taught to not think about the cause, but to run to a doctor to describe the symptoms and be given a poison in the form of a drug that gives you the opposite symptoms. Now, that may sound overly simplistic, but I'll give you a couple of examples. If you were working for a pharmaceutical company trying to create a new product and you found a chemical or you manufactured a chemical that nobody had ever patented, and so you fed it to animals, and in the animals, it caused diarrhea. Okay. Well, that would be a problem for you to clean up in the laboratory. But if you handed that information to the marketing department, they would go, oh, it's a poison that causes diarrhea. We can sell that as an anti-constipation drug. Vice versa, if it caused constipation, they go, oh, well, that's a problem for the animal, but we can sell that as an anti-diarrhea medication. Okay. It doesn't cure the problem. You don't have, people don't get heart disease because they have a deficiency of a statin in their system. Okay. They don't get, diabetes because they have a deficiency of, some diabetic medication. They don't get obese because they have a deficiency of Ozempic. Okay. The treatments do not cause a cure, they cause an effect that if you can be convinced that the new problem that the drug is causing relieves your symptom, you walk out of the pharmacy now with two diseases, the one you walked in with, and the disease being caused by the poison that you've been convinced you need to swallow every day in pursuit of health. Well, while you're there, they've got a list of God knows how many injections that they can sell you under the guise that it's going to prevent you from getting this, that, or the other ailment. But they don't want to talk to you about how often you're going to have to come back to be treated for the damage that that injection is doing to you. And until people wake up to the lie that is pharmacy, pharmakia, they're going to immediately, if they have any problem, if their first thought is, oh, I got to go to the doctor and get a prescription and get diagnosed and have my doctor tell me, what poison I need to take so that I don't notice the symptoms of the thing that I don't want to fix. My bad joke about all of this is that I was born with a terminal illness. It's called James Roguski syndrome. If I'm not feeling well, right, it's because my life is out of balance. And if I want to improve it, if I go talk to a practitioner, they don't have in the WHO's ICD-10 list of ailments. James Roguski syndrome is not one of the codes that they can write down so that they can get reimbursed for treating me. They have to misdiagnose me and put a name on whatever symptoms I talk about so that they can follow a protocol to poison me to make my symptoms go away. Now, if your practitioner asks you 500 questions about, well, what's going on with you? Maybe you should change this. Maybe you should change that. Maybe you should avoid this. Maybe you should start doing that. Now you're working with somebody who understands how to maintain, improve, optimize, or regain your health. If they take a couple of symptoms down and they write a prescription and off you go, you've fallen into the trap. And that's what we need to educate people about, in my opinion.
And that is a whole lot of a project. I know that there are a lot of podcasts out there and a lot of channels where you can find a lot of information. And then the people will need to know to make a decision, well, to know enough how to make a decision on what's right for them. And I hope that they will understand that it's better to do it this way than send or the responsibility to someone else's lab. So yeah, thank you for this pretty decent summary. And so I think the follow-up question here is like, yeah, we hope, of course, that RFK Jr. will be approved. It's a big question around it because I think also there are I've seen that some also within the GOP, the the Republican Party are trying to stop this from happening.
Mhm.
Do you think, let's say he's approved, do you think that he will be able um, to implement some of the things that he's talking about? Like,
Um,
what are the chances really?
one of the things that I try not to do is to speculate, and especially upon the actions of others. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, I can maybe control what I do. Okay. Now,
That is true.
I'll put it this way. I've put together, and I'll put it in the chat, but I've put together a website, not safe and not
Effective.
effective.com. And chapters 2, 3, and 4 are open letters to Donald Trump,
Yeah.
another open letter to Pam Bondi, who is Trump's nominee to
Yeah.
be Attorney
Attorney
General.
General.
And the fourth one is an open letter to RFK Jr. In our system. And I would encourage you to, because I don't know the answer, how wherever you may live, Israel, Netherlands, anywhere else in the world, wherever it may be, um, whomever the person was who authorized the use of the quote unquote vaccines
Mhm.
is most likely the person who also has the authority to revoke that authorization. So, talking to your local city council or talking to, any other health official, they're all going to say, oh, I can't do anything because I don't have the authority. There's got to be some person, whether it's the health minister or whomever it may be, who authorized the use. Well, in the United States, the president can direct whomever that may be to follow his order and do what he wants them to do if they have the authority to do so. I don't think Donald Trump is going to give that order. Okay. He thinks the jabs are great. He thinks that Operation Warp Speed is great. I disagree. Now, he could direct the attorney general to seek an injunction to ban these injections as a biological weapon that I believe them to be. And they could seize all of the product and all of the information and go forward with an investigation on that. That's what I think should happen. Pretty sure that's not going to happen. But if you don't ask, if you don't present it, then it's never going to happen. So I've already done that. With Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as if he does get confirmed as Secretary of Health and Human Services, he not only has the authority, he has the obligation to protect the American public from a dangerous and or misbranded product. He's obligated to recall any product that is damaging people's health. Would he do that against the wishes of the president? Boy, I doubt it. He'd be fired in a heartbeat. Okay. Um, the FDA director or commissioner, who the nominee is Marty McCary, um, has the authority to revoke the license. Is he going to do that without command from the top? I doubt it. Okay. Um, we shall see. And so I can't speak to what those people are going to do, but I very much doubt that they are going to do the things that I am calling for them to do. And it's because of the power of Big Pharma and the belief that, oh, these are great. They're wonderful. No problems. We don't want to look. Well, let me ask a rhetorical question. It's not a fair question because probably nobody here has even given it a thought. Um, Maybe people are aware that the WHO's one of their authorities that they have is to maintain the ICD-10 codes, the International Classification of Disease codes. So there's, to my knowledge, there's over 70,000 different, codes that people can be diagnosed with this, that, or the other disease. I'm pretty sure James Roguski syndrome is not one of them. Okay.
Can we ask
But
question?
in just a moment, let me finish my thought, and by all means. And so how many people here know the ICD-10 code for adverse events of a COVID-19 vaccine? Okay. One of the ailments that a person could be diagnosed by their doctor with is U12.9. That's the code, U12.9. If somebody works in an office and they're putting in your records and the doctor said, oh, it's suffering an adverse event from a COVID-19 injection, they should write in the records U12.9. In Germany, it was leaked out that there were hundreds of thousands of people who went to the doctor to be treated, and U12.9 was the code that was used. I bet you could ask everyone you know, and they would have no idea that such a code even existed. Their doctor would not be aware of it. And I can tell you that the computer systems that look at the records to put it into the national databases don't seem to ever find that code. It did happen in Germany, but it doesn't appear to be happening anywhere else in the world that I know of. Well, of course, there's no problem if nobody ever applies the proper code. And this is the deception. This is part of it, where the data management is being done in such a fraudulent way. Everyone was encouraged to write the code to say people had COVID. Whether they really did or not is a question. But nobody knows how to document the harm caused by the pharmaceutical products, even though it's killed, tens of thousands of people. If you don't know the code to write in the records to get put into the database, then for all intents and purposes, it didn't happen. If you have questions, by all means, please do.
Yes. So first of all, we'll take questions from the people here a little bit later. And so, yeah, maybe next question will be also a little bit of speculation, but I think, yeah, let's just try to follow the logic of what we've been seeing in the last couple of months, or more than a couple of months. And we really think that there will be the next crisis. We've seen the bird flu being spouted around. We've seen several other flus. I don't know, in Israel, they have been really scaring people towards overflooded hospitals due to people refusing to take the flu shot. Yeah, so what? Go wild with your imagination.
I don't know if that was a question.
Yeah, that was a question for you. Yeah.
I'm going to stand on my previous statement. If you can be driven by fear to allow someone to inject a poison into your body that you don't understand, then you are already a victim.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good answer. I think, yeah, we've all been here. I think one of those things that, as you say, a big step towards feeling better in this, what's going on in the world, is really just to stop being afraid. And
easier said than done, but yes.
That is true. Unfortunately, yes, that is true. All right. Yeah, I'm just reading here through. Yeah, so I think you summarized it quite well. I think we thought we would have about an hour to talk. So I'll open the floor now to some questions from our audience, but please do raise your hands and we'll take you one by one. And please be patient, try not to break into someone else's sentence and I have a dog here, as you can see, that sniffs me. So, all right, so I'll start off with I'm not sure your name is Yoshua or Yeshua Israel Ben David?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Ayelet, James,
Good evening.
Hello.
to see you. Thank you for what you're doing for the world, literally. I'm from Jerusalem, and in the time of the pandemic, we protest tens of thousands every weekend. That was fully suppressed. There was letters to the government. I think the media was having surely zero coverage about that. We got beaten, arrested, and the results didn't produce any, I would say, true fruits. Uh, we have, unfortunately, many people that by this fear and truly programmed by that. So it was very challenging even to explain that, even today when it's like you already saw the results. So your suggestions, we can create a letter as a, I don't know, about 100,000 people. That's if it doesn't float to the ground, surely in our country with the wartime. So it's what would you suggest to us here in Israel?
Well, I don't want to be so presumptuous as to even remotely assume to tell you what to do. Okay, you know better than I do in terms of your reality in your life. What I have done that I think makes sense is about 2.5 months ago, I was reviewing some legal documents that people had submitted, court cases from attorneys general and private individuals and so forth. And I looked at it and I said, if I was going to bring a court case, what evidence would I submit to support my position? Okay. And then I asked myself another rhetorical question, and I said, if someone came up to me and they said, Jim, I understand, I get it. The pharmaceutical solutions, the injections, vaccines, whatever you want to call them, I don't think they're good, but I don't know, right? How can I learn? What do I need to learn? Okay. And I said, well, where would I send them? What would I show them? What would I tell them? Okay. I'm not trying to convince people who don't want to know, because there are a lot of people who, they have blinders on and they don't want to hear it. But for people who want to know, and for people who believe that, if you make a statement, you should back it up with evidence. I spent 2 months collecting all of that. I put the link in there. That's what notsafeandnoteffective.com is all about. And I encourage everyone, and I'm going to say this in a, and I hope, funny way, please steal it. Please, copy it. Please translate it. Please, post it wherever you want or however you want. I have no copyright. I have no claim to it. I don't need any credit. This is just my personal filing cabinet of the things that I would like other people to know. And it starts with learning. In the past 2 months, I have learned an enormous amount of things that I thought I already knew a lot. But there are things going on that until you look, you can't find them. I did a search yesterday on an alternative search engine looking for something that I know exists. And the only thing I could find were statements by the FDA and the CDC. Okay. People cannot find the truth anymore. It's very well hidden. So, what I encourage everyone to do is to not try to push people to do anything other than maybe ask them some questions. Okay. Um, if you were having a respiratory ailment, what would you do? Would you go run to get a vaccine? Would you go run to the hospital, the emergency, or the doctor? Or would you think for yourself about what is going on and how you're going to deal with that in advance? Okay. Ask somebody, do you believe that what they're telling us in the media is true? Do you believe that the drugs and the jabs and the genetic therapies and all that are beneficial to you? And don't do it to try to convince people. Do it to identify more allies. If you have 100,000 people, if each of those 100,000 people spoke to 10, you might have 1,000,000. So work on strengthening your relationships with people who want to know the truth. And your power will grow. And when your power gets to the point where you are more powerful than the opposing forces, you don't really have to get into an argument with them. It becomes self-evident. It's the fact that people do not know. They believe what they have been propagandized, but they don't actually know. There are thousands, tens of thousands of published studies showing the harms that have been caused. But people just, they don't want to know. Government officials, whomever it may be. And so I hope that's an answer to your question.
Thank you.
Yes, you can write a letter to the prime minister or the foreign minister or the health minister or whomever. And if you have 100,000 people and 1% of them do it, then you got 1,000 letters that they're getting. That might be enough to get their attention. But what if you multiply that by a factor of 10? Okay. And if you do it again, you got more people than there are in Israel, I believe. So, grow your connection to your allies. We've got 39 people here. Okay. If everybody talked to 2 people just to identify them as allies, you'd be well over 100. Okay. Identify your allies first and foremost and grow that by asking people, what do you believe? What do you think? What do you know? Do you want to know more? Okay. And if they want to know more, the information, I've tried to make it available. It drives me crazy when I hear somebody say, oh, you should Google it. Oh my God. I mean, that's the worst thing at this point in time. That's the worst thing you could tell anybody,
We
because
must
all they're
provide
going
the
to get, yeah,
we must provide the information. I understand you. Thank you very much for your answer.
yeah.
Truly. So the things right currently in English, and surely you would want that it will be translated to multiple languages, for example.
That would be my dream. I hope that people will download and upload onto their platform, their website, print things out on paper so that they're tangible and real, and you can share them with other people. Share things, on whatever social media that is permissible these days, but, in emails or in person. But more importantly, learn it, right? Once you know it, I mean, they might be able to make you forget information, but if you are better informed, then you can better share that information with the next person. And I mostly only deal with people who want to learn. I'm not a school teacher, but I have a lot of friends who are school teachers, and I think you could ask any teacher, if a child wants to learn, they're going to learn. If they don't want to learn, it's pretty hard to teach them. And so, ask people, do you think you already know everything, or do you want to learn, more? Do you trust what you hear on the media or from the government? Or do have you read the thousands of studies that show that these products are the problem, not the solution? I can guarantee you no one has read them all. It's impossible. Okay. They
Thank
don't
you.
even want to admit that they exist. And so how you might put that together to present to an authority, okay? I leave that to each individual person to pick and choose. But the evidence is just unbelievably overwhelming. So much so that people are afraid to even talk about it because they don't want to know.
Yes. And actually what really needs to be done is just, as you say, have enough people to just say no.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now I think we feel this more, at least I personally feel this more and more and more. Like you see more people around you starting to talk about things and more open. So I also find myself on a personal level as able to more open up to say, hey, I am who I am, and I made my choices. that's it. I'm strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so we should not be afraid. That time is over.
Yep.
So
and on a unique man, woman, and child basis, when you're, you must accept, I think, that you are responsible for maintaining, optimizing, and restoring your health if you lose it. If you give over that responsibility to some authority figure, boy, you better choose wisely. Does that person work within a system? Or here's a really simple question, okay? In what medical system do you know where the person who is paid to help you maintain your health gets a bonus when you're healthy? Or do they get paid by some company to promote their products, regardless of the effect on your health? Does your doctor get more money from you when you're healthy? Or do they get more money from someone when they're treating your dis-ease?
yeah.
If you can't see the problem in that system, that's where the problem is. Now, who benefits when you're healthy? You and your family. Okay? If you allow yourself to become ill, that is when they prey upon you, because that's how they make money, to treat your illness, not to maintain your health. And that's the worldwide problem that we're dealing with.
Yes, that is true. I had one last question that I forgot to ask you earlier. Do you feel, for example, that if we go back for a moment to the WHO, that the public pressure that has been put so far, that it has some sort of influence on them? Or is this, for example, what is also causing the delays? Or some delays in the discussions, let's say?
Public pressure has had some influence, but the public pressure has been about the wrong things. Okay. If you read, oh, and you know what? Thank you for mentioning that, because there's one thing I definitely wanted to say and I almost forgot. The last version of the pandemic agreement that they have made public, meaning the WHO, is from May of last year. They've had many, many, many meetings since then. We have no idea what the current status of the document is.
Yeah.
So, putting pressure on what it is we want, most of the pressure that has been applied has been about a ghost. Okay. It's documents that people thought was what was going on, and they put pressure in a direction that I think is misguided. And at this point, it's been more than half a year. One of the most simple demands should be, excuse me, WHO, what is the current status of the document, and when is there going to be a public comment period for us to weigh in on it? How can we push back if they don't show us what they're negotiating until it's already done? Okay, that's not democracy by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, our negotiators who are participating are there and they know, but they're keeping it a secret from us. So if you want to demand anything, it's like, where's the opportunity for the public to weigh in on a document that's being kept secret? How is that of benefit to us? No, it's a corrupt business deal to funnel money right back into big pharma. And that's why they're keeping it secret, because if you actually read it, you'll understand it's not about lockdowns, it's not about mandates. And what they consider to be pandemic-related products are all pharmaceutical products, not herbs and vitamins and minerals and nutrition and good healthy food and treatments that are outside of big pharma. This is solely for the benefit of those who would profit from the next pandemic.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it really connects us as well, again, to us, just what they have to offer to us. Because eventually, if it's a lot of us rejecting what they have to offer, then actually no contract, first of all, between us and them. And yeah, and then they can't do anything. Like if it all revolves around money, there will be no from us to them to pay that
One of
effort.
the slippery things that they have done in the amendments to the regulations, it's already, adopted, can be rejected, but has been adopted, and very similar in the agreement, is it's very, very nebulous, to be determined later, multiple funding sources, all to funnel through the WHO to be directed to corporations and foundations and so forth. So their monetary structure, they literally call it the coordinating financial mechanism. They call it a mechanism, right?
Yeah.
They're very slippery. They're not going to say, oh, the United States is going to have to pay this and Canada's going to have to pay that and Israel's going to have to pay that. It's all backroom deals, quietly agreed upon to funnel money from whatever sources they can obtain through the WHO to businesses that are going to be building factories to manufacture poison. And so if you look for anything in these documents, look for, the vague manner in which they want to set up this coordinating financial mechanism. That's the meat of it. And the arguments that they're having, to answer your question, the reason they're having trouble is they're fighting over money. It's not what people think it is. They haven't been able to agree on who's going to pay for what and what nations and organizations are going to have to do. They're trying to put together a business deal and they're having trouble doing it, but they're stubborn and they're most likely going to accomplish it because everybody wants a piece of the pie.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. We have a question, another question. Mose, go ahead. You have to
I think
unmute
you're
yourself.
muted. Yep.
Let's unmute you.
Okay.
Yes.
James, how
There
are
you
you? Good to see you.
You as well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I have a couple of questions, but first I think, we need to identify who really is behind this. And it's not the pharma. The pharma is a tool in the hands of the governments or, the cabal or whoever that is. And so they comply, they vote on missions to basically poison their entire population. This is not something that is normal, and not money cannot be the justifying cause here. The other issue that I'm very concerned about is, Yale invented technology, and they're being proudly talking about it. Actually, even Bill Gates lectured about it, that they can spray vaccines from the air. And so we will not have the option to, stay strong and refuse. That will not be an option. And so unless we understand that, and this is why protests of any kind, letters, I met myself with ministers, I met with people high in government, I called upon members of Knesset in Israel, had a very long meeting with a very senior member here in New York for over an hour and a half, only me and him, spoke about all these issues. And they completely behave in the same way, whereby they say, I'm listening, I'm hearing, and then they just walk away and ignore. They've been ordered to ignore us. And that's why if you put out even 100,000 people on the street, it's not going to help. It cannot be done in the methods that we were used to, and it cannot be done in a legal method because the law is also owned by them. And if you ever heard Reiner Fulmich, who is in jail for over a year now, you understand that even somebody like him can be put down. So the problem that we need to understand is that the privilege of refusing is no longer in our hands, and the enemy is not. It's not money, and the enemy is not just their greed. It's far beyond that. Otherwise, it wouldn't put poison and kill so many. So I guess what is your suggestion in light of all of that?
Well, you made a lot of statements that I am not prepared to accept without discussion. Okay. Whenever somebody says it cannot work, it cannot be done, you can't do this, you can't do that. The reality of it is that the problem, okay, is most people have fallen for the propaganda. There are some people who you can talk to, and we don't have time. I can go into a long diatribe about my personal experience of recognizing that when you're talking to someone, when I'm talking to you and when I'm talking to everybody here, I'm talking to your conscious mind. Each one of us has our own programming. And these types of conversations don't change that programming. I don't know how to unhypnotize somebody and snap my fingers and get them to open up and realize that they are programmed and that they need to let in new information. So I tend to start with a very simple question. Do you already know everything, or would you like to learn something new?
But there's one thing I forgot to say. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yuval Noah Harari, the advisor of Schwab, the Nazi from the Economic Forum, mentioned and more than once, and we know it, and we've seen some of the the microscope that they were looking into the blood, that there's self-assembling particles, and those are technologies for mind control. And so this is why when we speak to people who rationally, normally will go, oh my God, look what they're doing to us, and will join us in a minute. This is why we cannot recruit anybody to come along. I've spoken to thousands and thousands of people over the last 4 years, through groups, through, directly, including doctors that I work in the medical field who I'm very close and friends with. Not one of them. I can count maybe on one hand how many of them said, maybe there is something there. Nobody nobody opens up their eyes and goes, oh my God, look what they're doing to us. And so they thought about ahead of time. They would not have started with this process without that control, that ability. And that's how they got 194 countries to basically assassinate their entire population with a smile.
Again, you're making universal statements. It can't be done. It's done by this. The self-assembling nanoparticles are fatty substances that naturally create spheres. And when they talk about self-assembling nanoparticles, it's just chemistry. Okay, the mind control stuff is yes, there are technologies out there, but I'm talking about something that is far more straightforward. Okay?
But the graphene oxide is not fatty tissue. No. Some of this stuff is metallic.
No, you're not. The conversation that we're having right now is exactly the conversation that I'm talking about. Okay. Rather than try to convince somebody, let me ask you, okay, do you know enough to have reached a point where you think that the things that I said, you resonate with in the sense of, the jabs are not good for you? If you simply don't try to convince somebody, but you just ask them, what is your belief? If they say, oh, I'm going to get the next booster the moment it comes out, my recommendation is to have them, wish them to have a nice day and move along. Okay. If they say to you, no, I don't know, I'm trying to figure this out, I'm confused. Okay. Then you can offer them some information if they want to learn. If they say to you, oh my God, this is horrible, I will protest this till my dying breath, you've identified an ally. Spend your time identifying allies. Work with them to help them identify allies. And then I'll give you a math problem. Okay. We have 37 people here. The math works out easier if we had 100. Okay. Everyone here should probably have the phone numbers and email addresses and names and contact and everything, so that everybody here can talk to everybody here and they know all of us know each other. Okay. If you have 100 people who get it and you count as an ally and you teach them to do the same thing and you do that one more time, 100 times 100 times 100. Okay. It's 1 million people. You go 2 more levels, you got the entire world.
But that's what I'm saying. With the mind control, you cannot speak to people. I've been doing it for 4 years.
I'm agreeing with you. Don't worry about it. Identify your allies. Grow that base. If you've got 37 people here, or now it's 36, maybe I upset somebody and they left. Okay. If you've got 36 people that you're connected to, and we all are on the same page, add a 0 to that number. Reach out to everybody you possibly can, and come back with 360 people, and then do it one more time. Identify the people who already understand and build those relationships to the best of your ability. Those are your friends. Those are now your family. Those are the people who will have your back and you'll have theirs. Then, when you have millions of people, the people still will not listen because you're trying to speak consciously to their programming. Okay. I don't know how to change somebody's programming. I only know how to help teach somebody who wants to learn. So you ask people, and you'll identify very quickly that probably 95% of them cannot be reached. They cannot be helped. There's nothing you can do. They're in your way. They are your opponent. Find the 5% and build those relationships and strengthen the movement, because that is what we need. We need to have people behind us to give us the strength to take the actions that need to be taken. Now, some of those people who don't want to hear it, something will happen and they'll have a second thought. And if you're ready to inform them when they want to be informed, you'll grow your numbers. Okay. So yes, if it's just me or you against the machine, we're going to get crushed. But if it's me and the 100 people I know and the 100 people they know and the 100 people they know, then we have the power on our side. Build your organization. Don't try to do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah,
Just to finish off, I've been trying for 4 years with, I can't even tell you how many, it's probably in the millions of people that I've sent messages to. Very few ever listen.
Ask them a question. Ask them a question. Do you believe that the mRNA platform is safe and effective? If they say yes, wish them a nice life. It's probably not going to be very long. Okay. If they go, I'm not sure, I don't know, then provide them with information to give them more strength. If it's only 1 out of 100 who go, oh my God, that's horrible, I'll never get another jab, build that relationship. And
I'm saying
teach
mind
them
control.
to do the same thing.
I'm saying mind control, mind control, mind control. They invested billions into that project, MK Ultra, and I believe that they cracked the code, and that's how they got all of us to behave according
Not
to the
all
way
of
that
us. Not see, you're programmed to say all of us. It can't be done.
Well,
okay?
a vast majority.
Put that off to the side and identify your allies, build those relationships, build that network, and grow the set of connections. And then you will find that you are not alone. There are millions of us, but you're trying to convince people who don't want to be convinced. That's frustrating and it's doomed to fail. But if you start by building your network and expanding it, you'll be astonished.
and I completely agree with that. I think
Thank you.
I think you need to be a little bit more secure and safe in what you're trying to do, so that it will come out of your energy. This is what you're sending out. But yeah, thank you guys for this discussion. It's good. I'm gonna let Shmuel for a moment.
Yes, good evening, James. Thank you for the unbelievable way that you explain and you make it so simple. And the important things are get their value
Oh.
You're
Sorry,
muted or something.
sorry. My mistake. It was my mistake. I wanted to mute Moses
Yes.
instead.
So thank you very much for the unbelievable explanation that you made it so simple. You put the attention of the things that can work and leave the things that will work and nothing will come out of it. I only wanted to tell that I have a website for all the people. How do you say Peilim?
The activists.
The activists. And the first one is what can everybody do to solve this problem in 5 minutes from his armchair at home per day. And it is exactly the same that you said. And I just put the link now in the chat, so everybody can have the technology how to implement what James said till now. So thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Yes, great. And of course, we have also our own website, Israel Exit Who, I think. I think Yeshua wanted still to say something. There was one
Just
more
a
hand.
short
Don't see one
comment.
now. Oh, there you are. Yes.
Just about short comment about my friend Moaz that said here mind control. Mind control was in the buses. סליחה בבקשה, מסכה, put the mask on your face. Fear instead, always fear for all the media channels. You don't need to dust from the clouds in order to mass control the people, because we saw how everybody was running for toilet paper and water without anything, just by programming and constant fear. And they just people was, you saw how they react.
Yeah, that is true. But we are stronger.
That the television telling a vision, that's how they controlling, by telling their vision into our minds. We just must do it stronger and share the vision, as James said. That's the only solution that we have, currently at least. Thank you.
All right. I think I don't see any more questions from anybody else here. So I think I would like to finish this this hour in a little bit. James, thank you so much for being with us
thank
tonight.
you for having me. Yeah.
Yes, it's been great to catch up a little bit, and especially also for encouraging messages as well of what we can really do, and that it's really not, although it may look like it's not the end of the world.
If I can
We just need to be
close,
strong.
if I can just close with this.
Yes.
There's the lecturing manner of teaching, okay? But then there's the Socratic method of asking questions. And so what I encourage people to do is ask questions. Your family, your friends, your business associates, school, wherever you may worship, ask a question to identify what is important to the man, woman, or child that you're talking to. And then be quiet and listen, because one of the things I think is going on is that connection is been broken because people want to force their will on the next person rather than get out of that person. What is it that you're afraid of? What is it that you're angry about? What is it that you're concerned about? What is it that you want? Now, if you had a list of your 20 top items that are important to you, I'm going to venture to guess it's probably different than the list of 20 that everybody else here has, different than mine. So if there's something that you disagree on, then move on to the next one and ask them, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And what do you think about some other thing? And if you identify where you have common ground, talk about that and work to make that aspect of it better in whatever way you can imagine. or you can spend your time fighting about the other 19 or however many there are. What we're doing is trying to force our beliefs upon someone when either it's not their priority or they're opposed to it. If you can identify where you have common ground and build a relationship on those lines, then the places where you differ, you might be able to get common, you might be able to get some traction because now you've built that trust. And so it's an energetic type thing. It's a very receptive type energy. What is it that you're concerned about? What is it that that person wants to talk about? If they're totally, believing something that you are absolutely opposed to, you could try to convince them and waste all your energy in that battle. Or you could turn to the next person who wants to work on a problem that you both feel is important. And you're going to get a whole lot more done than if you're trying to convince somebody who's diametrically opposed to you. So it's a different view of how you build a movement. If you think you're going to convince people who do not want to be convinced, you're going to have war. If you want to work with people who already are doing what you think should be done, you're going to have way more success. And you can apply that to almost anything. So, identify your allies. There's going to be some people who are on the fence. Give them more information to bring them onto your side. And when you have big enough numbers, you will win the discussion because the truth is, on your side if that's what you're doing. So yes, it can appear to be impossible if you think it's you against the entire system. So make it be not just you. Get as big a list of supporters individually, each individual person. I've said this many times and it's kind of old school, but get a notebook, an empty notebook, and write down the number of people that you have connection to, that you trust, that you are in agreement with on any given topic, and get their phone number and their email address and all of their social media and whatever, so that you're very, very well connected, and have a conversation with those people. Everybody here, what do we got? 33 people now. Every one of you should be talking to every one of you on a regular basis because you're like-minded and you could support each other. And then add to that list as you go, and whatever the number may be that you have on your own personal list of contacts and supporters, add a 0 to it. Work to expand it by an order of magnitude. You do that once, suddenly you're an influencer. If you've got 10 people now and you grow that to 100, you've got 100 people that you know and trust. And if you send them all an email, you're gonna make an impact. But if you're trying to do it all by yourself without that network, it seems impossible, but it's not.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I would like to add something. There is another post about what you explained, how to make people to observe that you're asking questions till they will change their mind, and then they will be convinced and they will continue. And it's in Hebrew, and I just put it in the chat. This is the first thing that I wanted to say. And the second thing, James, I would like to tell you that in every area in life, there are some crazy leaders, not sane, that everybody tells how they are not sane, how they are ridiculous, how they are taking all of us to the end of the world, but they don't listen to anybody. They just know the truth and they go their way, and all the other people get a lot of energy from those people. And you are my leader and my example, and I thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. We'll close this call for today. But James, we will see you again soon.
Thank you much. All the best, everybody.
Hey.
Bye-bye.